this is Leslie Noble, and this is No Bullshit Truth Radio. Before we get started, this podcast is for educational and insight only. It is not therapy, it's not a substitute for therapy, and it does not replace mental health treatment. Listener discretion is advised, especially with this sensitive topic I'm about to go into. Okay, I'm on fire today, so we're going to go there. There's a conversation happening online right now about sexual violence, about men joining a so-called Rape Academy website. It's not just a headline, it's a mirror. And women are looking into that mirror and seeing something they've known their entire lives. I want you to hear this. This is absolutely no bullshit. Sexual violence is not rare. It's not isolated. It's not a few bad men. It is a cultural pattern that we have not addressed. It is a developmental pattern, and it is a systemic pattern. It's a cultural pattern, a developmental pattern, a systemic pattern. And women are so damn tired of pretending otherwise. I am sick of it. Sick of it, sick of it, sick of it. And when stories like this go viral, I don't even think women respond with shock anymore. They respond with recognition. And in fact, when I saw that, I don't always read what's in the headlines because it's such a cultural outrage shock value right now. I'm trying to be, in my own work, to be really careful about that because I want my work to come across as honest and integrity, which is why I'm going to give you some research today. But when I saw that, I thought, surely, if you don't know what I'm talking about, surely there are not 60 million men that have joined this website, Rape Academy. And so I did some research. It is absolutely the truth. 60 million men joined a website teaching them how to rape their partners and their wives and their girlfriends. 60 million men joined a website teaching them how to rape their wives, their girlfriends, and their partners. Here is what actual research tells us. 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. 1 in 5 women will experience rape or attempted rape. Most assaults are committed by men that they know, and most survivors never report it because they're terrified they won't be believed. Think about our culture right now. What's the first thing we do when a woman is in the media or in the news talking about her sexual assault? Well, I'm not sure that's true. I don't know. She could be lying. People don't understand the courage and the bravery comes with telling the truth about things that have happened to you. I experience that every day. I've been a therapist for almost 30 years. Hundreds of men and women, it happens to men too, but not as often, hundreds of women that have been sexually assaulted, experienced sexual harassment, abuse, domestic violence within their own marriages and relationships, emotional, spiritual, financial, physical abuse. So when thousands of men, millions of men, join a platform dedicated to violent misogyny, women don't think anymore, wow, that's an anomaly, that's extreme. What they think is, yeah, of course it exists. Of course it's this many men. Of course we aren't imagining this. We aren't responding to a headline anymore. We're responding to a lifetime of experience. I want to tell you about my own experience, and I'm only going to tell you a few. There's been more. But most women you talk to have had experiences with men being inappropriate. In high school, maybe even sooner than that. I remember in middle school, I played tennis. I've played tennis since I was 5. And I remember walking in the gym in middle school. An adult coach in his 40s made a comment about my butt. You have a nice ass there, Leslie. Looking good. You've been out looking good. I was 11 years old. In high school, walking down the halls, I developed pretty early in high school, boys making comments about your boobs or popping your bra strap. So those things happened when I was younger. In college, men that would throw a fit or boys that would throw a fit because you didn't want to have sex with them. Getting drunk and grabbing at you. These things happen to women every day, and they're so normalized, like, oh, boys will be boys. But I would ask men to take a step back and ask themselves if my daughter's bra strap was popped, or somebody made a comment about my daughter's boobs or her butt, or an adult man made a comment about her butt. You'd be infuriated. You wouldn't say boys will be boys. And that's the problem, is that unless it affects us within our own circle, sometimes we avoid it and we don't want to believe that it's the experience of most women. We're responding to a lifetime of these things happening and them being normalized. It's just part of boys will be boys culture. And it's so not true. So the thing this week has been about Therapy Jeff. And Therapy Jeff I'm not real familiar with him, so I don't want to be unfair and make a bunch of comments about him. But his name is Jeff Gunther, and he's a licensed professional counselor in Oregon. And he made a suggestion publicly this week that there needs to be a hotline for men that have violent sexual thoughts. Listen, I'm not here to drag him. I'm just here to talk about the impact of those kinds of comments, especially to women and survivors. The comment lands like this, whether he intended it or not. These thoughts are common enough that we need a hotline. Women should accept that men struggle with rape fantasies. This is normal male psychology. And women said, that is terrifying. Absolutely not. Because why would we normalize violent sexual fantasies? What safe places where those fantasies aren't cultivated in the first place? A hotline is not going to fucking fix a systemic issue. A hotline is not going to undo decades of socialization. A hotline does not prevent the harm. It just doesn't. And for us to pretend like I'm going to do a hotline so we can get these men some help, how about we look at the systemic and the cultural issues that forms a rapist? It starts when they're young. So I'm going to talk about what the actual research, okay? And I want to talk about what actual prevention says. But before we talk about prevention, we have to talk about development. So this has come from decades of research against criminology, psychology, and public health, shows these consistent patterns. 1, early exposure to misogyny and dehumanization of women. Boys who hear women talked about as objects or conquest internalize that entitlement. Internalize that entitlement. Emotional underdevelopment is another thing that we need to look at. When boys are taught to express vulnerability, empathy, and emotional expression, when they're taught not to do those things, they lose the emotional skills that prevent harm. If I have empathy for a woman and her body being touched against her permission, or I don't want to do anything that would make this woman feel unsafe in my presence, then I'm going to have the emotional skills to prevent harm, because I'm going to understand from your perspective how harmful that could be to you, and I care about you. Peer reinforcement. Male peer groups reward dominance, aggression, and sexual conquest, creating a breeding ground for coercion. Violent pornography, exposure at a young age. This shapes beliefs about what sex should look like. Let's not even just take it from a boy's perspective as a therapist who works with couples. Pornography is ruining marriages. I can't tell you the number of couples that come and one of them has a problem with porn, and it's eroding the intimacy in their marriage. It gives you the idea of what bodies don't look like, what true love doesn't look like, and sex and vulnerability and sexual intimacy. It is eroded by porn, and porn is harmful to marriages and it's harmful to your brain, period. I changed my mind about that because I've seen it too often. It teaches you that this is what sex is supposed to look like, and this is how women should be treated. Not to mention the fact the women that do porn and the women that are involved in sex in that type of industry, there's a really high percentage of those women that have experienced sexual trauma. And it bothers me. It bothers me. Okay, violent pornography at a young age. Yeah. Lack of accountability is when boys see men harm women with absolutely no consequence. They learn that women's safety is optional. I think that we're seeing more accountability, but we're not even close to where we need to be. I don't know if you just saw Louis Theroux's documentary on the manosphere. And when he interviewed these men, I love the way he did accountability, because he did it in a way where he just asked questions and he didn't have to say anything, revealed themselves. And really at the core, they didn't believe those things. They just wanted to be famous. They just wanted to get fame through these outrageous comments. And regardless of whether it's true or not, whether they have those beliefs, it is really dangerous to boys and teenagers who are trying to form their own identities and what they believe about relationship and connection and marriage. It is our responsibility to hold these people to account for outrageous comments. Outrageous comments that are based and influenced on patriarchal norms and misogyny. And we have a culture right now that excuse some of those behaviors. Boys will be boys, or he didn't mean it that way, or she's exaggerating, or she just misunderstood him. It is not a momentary impulse. It is a trajectory, and it is a choice, and none of this is going to be solved by a hotline. Okay? Let's clear up one of the biggest cultural distractions that we hear all the time. And I've lived this myself, where I stood up for myself, where I felt like somebody's being inappropriate, and I was looked at kind of like, is she telling the truth or not? I was. But we also then will hear the other person say, I didn't do it. I didn't touch her that way. I don't know what she's talking about. Like that person's going to go, oh yeah, I was inappropriate. And so I want to clear up, and this is the part that really pisses me off, is one of our biggest cultural distractions is that the first thing we do is not believe the woman. False allegations are rare. And this is research-based, okay? 2 to 10% of sexual assault allegations are false. 90 to 98% are true. 2 to 10%, that is low when you look at 1 in 3 women have experienced some sort of sexual harassment or trauma in their lifetimes. 2 to 10% is low. And how does it benefit the person that's making the allegation? How does it benefit them to lie? How does it benefit you to lie? I'll tell you, it doesn't benefit you. Because if you say something, then you're the bad guy for saying something. If you don't say something, then you're the slut who allowed it. It is a no-win situation. So guess what happens? Most people say nothing at all. They don't report it. They either just deal with it or they disappear. So when people center false allegations in a conversation about sexual violence, they're focusing on the statistical outlier instead of the overwhelming reality. And that is, my friends, is just avoidance. The problem isn't worrying about whether women are lying. The problem is women staying silent because the culture has taught them that speaking up is dangerous. It's dangerous because you're not going to get support when you speak up for yourself and you act with self-respect and you say, this is not okay. You're not always met with support. You're met with, well, let me go hear his side. What side is there to sexual harassment, abuse, sexual assault? There is no side. Period. There is no side. There isn't one. So I want to shift for a minute because we've been talking about rapists and men who sexual harass and sexual assault. And there are good men. See, here's the thing. You could hear me talking for the last 10 minutes and think, God, this woman hates men. And that is not even far from true. I think men are great. I know some really great men. My grandfather was one. He was top tier. He was an amazing man. He was a great grandfather. He was a good father, and he was a good husband to his wife. And my grandparents were married for 60 years. They had a true love story. So I know some good men. I know men that I'm in a martial arts class. There are good men in there. In fact, one last night we were doing a grappling exercise and he said to me, you're a woman, you tell me what's uncomfortable for you. And that was so refreshing because he recognized this could make her really uncomfortable with me throwing my body across her. I want to make sure that she trusts me and that she feels comfortable. He didn't assume, well, she just needs to deal with it. That's part of martial arts. And I appreciated that about him so much. I did. It made me have a lot more respect for that space. And there are good men in that space that I'm learning from. There are good men that I've worked with over lifetimes. There are good men in my family. There are good men that I've gone to school with in the past, in high school with. I could name good men. So I don't sit in a place of all men are this way because I don't believe that all men are this way. So I want to talk about good men for a second because they exist too and they matter. So I think sometimes good men feel defensive when we start talking about these things. And one of the things I want to say to you is just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Just because it's not something you would ever do doesn't mean that doesn't happen. So the fear isn't surrounded about just the individual man. It's about the world we live in. Of course good men exist. Of course there are men that are good partners and good husbands and good fathers and good grandfathers and good uncles and good friends. But sometimes I think men don't always know what to do and how to support the women in their lives. So I'm going to tell you what actually helps. First, number one, believe women. Believe women. Validation is healing. Don't minimize a woman's fear. It's not irrational. It's statistical. Most women I know can give you example after example after example. You want to be a good man? Challenge harmful behavior in other men. You listen to other men more than they listen to women, really. You hear men brag and say things. I could give you an example of dating apps right now, just from clients and my own experience. I've given up on them just because there really isn't. I'm sure there are good men on there. I'm sure there are that want to meet partners, want to date, want to do the right thing. But what you have to go through to get there is just not worth it. You can't get on there without somebody being sexual the first time they talk to you. You can't get on there without somebody saying something rude or mean, or when you do say, hey, it's not really what I'm looking for, you get met with hostility. I can't call a bitch or prude, or you misinterpreted what I was saying. I don't want, you want me to have self-respect. Men say, I want a woman that has self-respect. So when I act with self-respect, you get angry or you don't believe me. You say that you want women that have self-respect. You want a woman that's going to be faithful to you. You want a woman that's trustworthy. You want a woman that's going to be loyal. But when she acts with self-respect, we get met with not believing you, or you're met with suspicion or defensiveness. Why would I want to talk about sex with somebody I've known for 5 seconds? That's not acting with self-respect, and maybe there are women that do that. But if you're truly looking for the right person, or you're truly looking for the person that acts with self-respect, you can't have it both ways. So do the emotional work. Do the work. Meet women with empathy, regulation, accountability. This is healthy masculinity. This is the healthy masculinity we should be teaching boys. Stop telling boys to man up. Stop laughing when a boy at 5 years old looks at a woman and whistles at her and goes, woo woo, oh, it's so cute, it's so funny. It's not funny. It's not funny. Teach your sons how to respect women. Ask women, how can I support you? Don't assume that you know someone's story. Ask them. Don't look at a woman and assume because she looks like this or because she acts like this must be who she is. Ask. Ask someone who they are. Don't assume their story. Understand women's fear isn't personal. Understand women's fear isn't personal. It's cultural. Help build safe spaces so women don't have to be hypervigilant. Not by protecting women, but by changing the conditions that make protection necessary. I'm taking martial arts right now, and I love it, and I think any woman should take it, because for the first time in my life, I feel like I probably could protect myself. Walked in situations as hypervigilant as I used to. But you sit at a bar after work, 5 o'clock with my friends, and something happens almost every time. So then you learn to be hypervigilant. Me and my single friends were talking about that you can't go into a space, and I'm not talking about somebody walking up and introducing themselves. It being inappropriate, like I'm not going to go into details and say that some of the things that have been said, but we need to call out your male friends and change the conditions that make protection necessary. See, the thing is, good men are not the problem. So don't be defensive if you're a good man. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened or it doesn't happen. You are actually part of the solution. You are the solution to this problem. By standing up for your wife and your mothers and your sisters, and when you hear inappropriate, misogynist language, standing up for women in your workplace. I can think of when I was in the corporate environment, one of the bosses I had was amazing. He was an absolute champion for women leaders. I mean, he absolute champion. Most of the people on his team were women. That's a good man standing up for women, breaking those patterns and helping them become amazing leaders. So here's the no bullshit truth today. The absolute no bullshit truth. Women are not overreacting. Women are responding to a lifetime of evidence. And until we stop treating violence like an individual moral failure instead of a cultural design flaw, nothing will change. Sexual violence is not a glitch in our system. It's a system that was never built with women's safety in mind. Prevention doesn't start with just a hotline number. It starts with childhood. It starts with childhood, with accountability, with dismantling the beliefs and norms and power structures that teach boys entitlement and teach girls fear. Women deserve a world where safety is the norm, not the exception. A world where trust isn't a gamble. A world where she doesn't have to hold her keys between her fingers when she walks to her car. A world where their bodies aren't collateral damage in someone else's socialization. A world where women can walk down the hall in high school and not get their bra straps popped. A world where you can go to parties, and because there's a party does not mean you're entitled to have sex, or that boy is entitled to you because you've been drinking. A world where we don't look at someone and say, well, she deserved that. Look at what she's wearing. A world where we believe women. We believe them. And we support them. And we ask them the question, what can I do to make this environment better for you? What can I do to make it safe? And as long as women stay silent and they don't keep demanding that world loudly, unapologetically, and together, it's going to continue to happen. I know that this isn't popular to have this conversation. I know it isn't. But it's the truth, and it is the no bullshit truth. This isn't some filtered outrage that I have. This is the truth. I see it every day in my practice. Every day. I've worked with hundreds of women over the last 30 years. Story after story after story. It is the truth. So believe the women in your life. Join with them loudly, unapologetically, and join with them in partnership to eradicate sexual violence. That there's a world where a woman can walk down the street and not have to worry about comments or some creep approaching her. That's the world that we need to live in. And that's a world that is possible when good men stand up for them. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been No Bullshit Truth. I'm a therapist that's been working for 30 years on helping people heal from complex trauma. I have a betrayal guide that I've been working on really hard. It's evidence-based and research-backed, and it's no bullshit. It is to help you heal from betrayal, all kinds of betrayal. If you've experienced sexual trauma, please go to Psychology Today. Look up a therapist that specializes in trauma that can help you. This is not meant to take the place of of you actually getting real evidence-based trauma healing. It's out there. We know so much more about trauma than we used to. So find yourself a good trauma specialist. Until next time, this is Leslie Noble. Thank you.